Welcome to the Modern Hippie podcast, where we'll be exploring all of my favorite boundary-pushing people and topics surrounding consciousness, psychedelics, mental performance, functional medicine, living in alignment, and so much more. I'm your host, Barrett Perlman, a former pro wakeboarder turned body worker, energy healer, and well, a modern hippie. And I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to the Modern Hippie podcast. I am joined today by a dear friend and mentor of mine, Lynn Teachworth, who is a massage therapist in Florida who has trained in 34 different modalities. He's the founder of Trunamics, the youngest person in the world to be inducted into the World Massage Hall of Fame. He's an energy healer and a gift fellow at the Gray Institute, and you also specialize in structural integration. You're just honestly one of the most profound people I've ever had in my life with regards to like body work, energy work, all the things. So,
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Don't hear that
yeah.
very often.
To give my listeners a little background, I have known you, I think, since I was like 19 years old, which makes this about 17 years of
Yeah,
friendship and body work.
that back in the putting your body together when you were a wakeboarder, crushing it out there
Yeah.
on the water.
Seriously, I found my way into your office by way of my wakeboard coach, Glenn Fletcher at O-Town Water Sports. I had thrown out my back really bad. And I had been to like 2 different chiropractors who told me that I was never going to wakeboard again. And I needed to fix how I held my hips and this and that. And Glenn and his wife, Melissa, kept being like, you need to go see Lynn. You need to go see Lynn. And I was like, but Lynn's more expensive. And finally, after like 3 months of pain, I was like, I give up. If your guy's so good, I give up. I'll pay anything. And I walked out of your office for the first time in 3 months without pain. Like I went and sat in the car and cried because I had forgotten what it felt like not to be in so much pain every day.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome. And that's what I feel bad about. There is in a lot of the education systems and a lot of the treatment modalities are really outdated or taught from an old model because really lower back pain is one of the easiest things there is to fix, to help people with, unless it's like you need surgery. If not, it's actually something that's pretty easy to deal with.
yeah, and you
But
blew my mind. It ended up, most of it ended up being in my hips. And it was just like
yeah,
you got in there, loosened it up, and gave me a few stretches. And I had some other discs and things that were out of place as well that were contributing to this misalignment. But
yeah, that's the thing with lower back pain. It all comes from the front of the body, right? All the adductors and hips and hip flexors crank everything forward and jam up the lower back, and especially wakeboarding, right? It's all about force absorption going so high. If all that doesn't work, your lower back will just get jammed up, and then you get herniations, which really has nothing to do with the spine.
oh, interesting. What do
hmm
herniations, what do they have to do with?
Well, it's just alignment, right? Because in being a structural integrator, right? I mean, you can call it Rolfing. I trained it under Tom Myers. There's so many different things out there. But, after 1,000 hours of staring at people in their underwear and really understanding anatomy and the position of the body to the nth degree, and then when you throw functional biomechanics on top of that, you can really kind of understand how the body works. And so, wakeboarding is an example. It's kind of like golf or some of these other sports where we're bent forward. We're all sitting in desks. We're driving. We're all bent forward in flexion. And so if you think about like your femurs, right, your leg bones are sitting there, and then your pelvis is sitting on top of that, and then on top of that are your vertebrae. And so bones really are at the mercy of all the ligaments, the fascia, the muscles, and all that information from the meridians and everything. And if we all get really tight in our quads and hip flexors, and especially like I say in wakeboarding, you're kind of bent forward holding that, you're getting yourself really strong in flexion. And so if your pelvis is bent forward and then you go to stand up and walk around, your spine has to almost go backwards to compete with gravity. So I guess if you
Mm,
think about your spine doing two things, when you bend forward, it goes into flexion, and when you lean backwards, it goes into extension. And so when everything in the front of your pelvis is tilted forward, your spine's automatically there. So anytime you lean back, or God forbid, land on the water from jumping, it just starts to compress the disc. So if we get all the muscles in the inside the legs and the front of the legs to decompress and allow the pelvis to go back, then the vertebrae has a nice platform to sit on, and then you don't have any more back issues. The herniations will go away.
Mm,
So, not to be
definitely.
technical, but that's kind of how most of it works.
This is a little
Same with
technical.
sacroiliac joints and all that. Yeah, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I threw my back out recently again. And I, of course, as a body worker myself, I'm just usually too busy to go get work done now because I'm like, oh, I've got to take a whole day off work to get body work done and maybe even the whole next day. And like,
Oh,
how do
I
I
hear you.
plan? How do I plan that into my life? But I have a friend I've been training in massage who just wants to do it for fun, but he's really good at it. And so I had him come over and he's like, so you want me to like do your lower back? I was like, no, I want you to do my legs. I want you to do my hips. I want you to do like
Yeah,
everything literally but my lower back. And
exactly.
yeah.
That's how it works, right? That's why you see a lot of other modalities like, well, we're going to need to see you 3 times a week for 6 months to get this opened up. It's like, or maybe once or twice, and we actually get to the root of the problem
Hmm.
that could help it. So, but to each their own. I just like things that work.
So how did you get into body work?
Well, it's kind of funny. I grew up in a little farm town in Nebraska, and my dad was a pretty well-known chiropractor, and he was always into kinesiology and acupuncture and, energy stuff. And, back because in a small town in Nebraska, you can't bring people back 3 times a week to get them better. Either people get better or they don't. So you have to have really good skills. That's why like most of the great chiropractors are in these little towns all over the Midwest, right? Because
Hmm.
if they don't get results, they don't have a business. And so it's not like a city where it's like, hey, we can do a PI and do the bare minimum and see you 100 times and make a lot of money, right? That doesn't work in that condition. But anyway, I that's kind of where I grew up. So I always had that attitude of, hey, if you're gonna do something, do it right. And I really had an interest in it, but I was kind of the black sheep of the family that wanted to get a business degree instead of that, and I was too dumb to pass organic chemistry probably. So I was going to make it through chiropractic school, so I got a business degree. And after I graduated from college, I moved to Dallas and hated my corporate sales job, but luckily a drunk lady rear-ended me and I started seeing this
Hmm.
chiropractor that was just, kind of doing the same thing over and over. But so my dad was like, hey, you need to find somebody to help with your soft tissue injuries. And so I ended up going to this lady who was a rolfer, and she just kind of looked at my feet and said, oh my gosh, I got to look at your feet and lower legs because I have these like super high arches that cause all kinds of issues in my body. And I said, well, no, I had whiplash, so my neck's really messed up. And she's like, okay, anyway, lay on the table. And she, beat up my legs and got it going. And I stood up and I was like, oh my gosh, my feet feel amazing. Did you do? And she goes, well, how does your neck feel? I'm like, oh my God, it doesn't hurt. You hardly touched it. And I went, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I went back again. And by the time I got done with my second session, I'm like, yeah, sorry, mom and dad, I'm going back to school. So it was just
Mm.
the coolest thing ever. So I ended up moving to Florida and going to massage school. And then just, I was supposed to move to LA after 2 years, but I just kept working with more and more athletes. So I just never made it out there. So here I am,
Wow, I
still
don't
in
blame you.
Florida.
To my knowledge, you've worked with the Orlando Magic. You've worked with most of the pro golfers on the pro tour, pretty much probably every single pro wakeboarder on the pro tour. Any pro athlete who lives in the greater Orlando area has probably been to you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a lot of fun. I still work with a lot of guys in the NFL, and wakeboarding's almost non-existent, but it's still there. Still work with a
Yeah,
few of those guys, and yeah, it makes me sad. But yeah, I
me too.
do. I don't travel with them as much as I used to. I mean, if somebody gets hurt, I might head out there now and then, but mostly it's just because I'm teaching so much anymore. I've kind of got out of that
Hmm.
phase. I mean, I still see them all the time at work, but my schedule's pretty busy. So, but no, it's
Yeah.
awesome. And I never really, there's all kinds of sports massage techniques and all this stuff out there. I think I took one in the beginning, and there's some of my friends that teach some amazing stuff with that out there. But I always say, Michael Jordan's body doesn't work any different than my grandpa's or my grandma's. And that, sports, if you understand biomechanics and how to get people better, treating a little old lady that got a hip replacement is almost the same as getting the most out of an athlete, in their
Hmm.
performance or their pain. So it's just kind of a marketing term. It's kind of like when you go, well, this is a sports medicine doctor. I hear people will say that in my classes. Oh, I'm a sports medicine. Oh, great. Who do you work with? Athletes. Oh, like who? Well, my daughter's seventh grade volleyball team. Oh, great. So you get a certification and it doesn't really mean much. It's just a marketing term for that stuff. So our bodies were all the
Hmm.
same. It's just athletes are good for marketing, right? That's what we kind of laugh about.
Yeah. And so so you went to massage school, and at what point did you start transitioning into more structural integration techniques?
That was that from that first experience, and then I just didn't have the money or time to go out to the Rolf Institute. There was a guy named Tom Myers who was an instructor there who I had met at another conference, and he was talking about kind of leaving there and going to do his own thing because I love the Rolf Institute. They're great, but they're very like, we're the best. This is how you do it. You must come to Colorado, and not everybody
Mm,
can afford 30 grand and moving to Boulder, Colorado for a year. So we talked him into
seriously.
coming to Orlando and doing the first modules over a year. And so it was pretty awesome to do that because, the first level of that's like 800 hours and a lot of money and time and,
Oof.
more than massage school was. So that's how I got into that. And, there's just so many great massage techniques out there that I just kept learning and learning. But that's the best as far as, really helping things. And then that transitioned into energy work. My son, I'd been a Reiki master since, I don't know, I was like 24, 25, and I'd use it here and there. But my son had a really, really bad reaction to a vaccine and almost died. And he was in intensive care for a while and, wasn't doing well. We had to bring him home because he was bright orange. His liver wasn't working right and he had bilirubin all over.
Mm,
And so for about 4 years, he could only eat five or six things because he was so reactive, his nervous system. And, anytime if anybody sprayed pesticides, we were outside for a walk, it's like, okay, well, here's a reaction. Let's get the Benadryl.
mm.
And I tried every medical doctor and every natural doctor, everything, and nothing would work. And I ended up hearing about this technique called BodyTalk, which at the time was new energy medicine technique. And I took my son to see this lady, and I thought it was the stupidest thing in the world because she's like tapping on his head and testing his arm. And I'm sitting in the corner, like, okay, she's going to pull out crystals and slaughter a goat or something. I was like, oh God, what are we doing? But she started asking me some questions about his emotional state, like, hey, did this happen to him? Did this happen? I'm like, yeah, how are you figuring that out? I was like, oh my God, is this like the psychic hotline? How did you know that? And so she tapped on a few things and she said, oh, I repaired his DNA, so he should feel better. I was like, whatever, you can't do that. And she's like, well, I'd like to see him in about 10 days. I said, my schedule's real busy. I'll call you. Let me look at it. And I like left like, yeah, you'll never see me again, even though she was really cool. In fact, we split space together right now. But I got my little hyperactive son in the car. He passed out, slept like 18 hours, got up, and never had another allergy again, other than to cats, which he
Wow.
still has. But other than that, it was fine, and his eczema was gone in about 5 days. And I went, okay, whatever this was worked. And so I went and got some sessions and ended up learning it and met the guy that invented it. We became good friends. He came up and worked with a couple athletes that I worked with, and I just decided to dive into it and became an instructor and taught it in 7 countries for 15 years. And then actually he passed away last week. That was sad, the founder of
Oh.
that. But I really liked the technique. That was my intro to it. I left that organization a few years ago just because they were kind of getting in some paths I didn't want to go into, but it got me into the energy medicine and being able to deal with emotions and belief systems and chakras and all this crazy stuff that was just amazing, brain parts and all that. And so that was kind of my introduction to it. And then, of course, then source point therapy came along and pranic healing and UN method and all the millions of things that are out there. And it's just amazing what you can help people with that. So that was the energy thing, right? And then
Mhm.
doing those two. And then I was over in the UK teaching, and one of my students used to be the trainer for Chelsea Club. and we went to do some work with him and have fun and hang out with those guys. And he was like, "Hey, you've got this thing in your back. Can I show you how to fix that?" And I said, "Yeah, my lower back is killing me too, and this." And he goes, "Oh, this is an easy fix." And he put me in this big stretching cage called a true stretch and had me do some movements that I couldn't hardly do. And he's like, "Okay, now walk." And my back was perfect. I'm like, "What the hell was that? How did you figure that out?" And he goes, "Oh, I learned from the Gray Institute in the States." And I'm like, "Well, what is that?" He said, "Well, there's this guy, Gary Gray, that, all this stuff in physical therapy that we're taught was completely wrong about how the body works. And, check it
Mm.
out." So I watched a couple of his videos, which I was almost arguing with him because it made everything that I'd learned about function and mechanics and gait and all that wrong. And so I thought, well, let me go take a couple classes. Next thing you know, I'm in another 1,000-hour training. But it was fun, and that's like our business with my wife and I. It's Chunamic, so we call it we. It's a made up word about the truth of the dynamics of the body until we came up with a better
Mm.
word, and then it just stuck. So we kind of look at the body as, in all of our classes the same way. If you look at Vedic philosophy, it's like sattva, rajas, and tamas. You have the physical body, how it moves, and then the information. Same as Christianity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. I mean, that's how God created our bodies. So we like to educate people on, here, you got to work on the physical body. Hey, you have to do the energetics. Hey, you have to do some functional stuff, because we get stuck in one level, and
Mhm.
you got about a 33% chance of getting people better if you're doing one thing, right? So the more you
Right.
learn and you look at that, and it goes. And then, my wife, Ann, is a yoga teacher trainer. She actually works for Deepak Chopra here in Orlando.
Oh,
Teaches at
cool.
his center here, but she also is the um, educational chair for a massage school in town. And so she's what's called a Franklin method trainer. And Franklin method is really popular up in New England, but it's embodied training, embodied anatomy. And so,
Mm.
like, when people come in, if we're teaching about the foot and lower leg, or like tomorrow we start teaching a class on the organs, she can actually take your brain and your proprioceptive nervous system, right? It's like if I put my hand behind my head, I know where that is based on my what we call proprioceptors. And so she's really good at getting the body and the mind and the proprioceptive nervous system to play together. So, like, tomorrow she'll take people through explaining exactly how the diaphragm moves in breath, right? And how, as it comes down, it
Mm.
spirals out, and then as you breathe out, it comes back up. And she'll have you start feeling the different sides of your diaphragm, and then she'll have you feel the liver. And long story short, we'll have people move and feel like, wow, how does your organ move when you move? And when people leave the class, not only they know how to release the organs and help people, but it also it changes your body so much, because when you leave, you can actually feel your kidneys move when you breathe, or you can feel your bladder move when you
Mm.
lean backwards, just because we've never been taught how to do it. So when we teach
Yeah.
anatomy, we do it embodied. So she does that, and then she goes to Colorado every year and teaches cadaver labs. That's like her thing, is anatomy. And so we kind of put those together for our classes. So our approach is kind of looking at structure, function, and energetics.
Mm. It's powerful stuff. I mean, I want to get out there and train with you one of these days.
Yeah,
And
anytime.
I remember the last time I saw you was 2 summers ago, and I had had this bad snowboard injury where I, bruised my
Oh
lungs, I
yeah.
bruised my collarbone, I had knocked myself out, I had to get stitches in my chin, but I was suffering from injury-induced asthma, which I got under control mostly with acupuncture, but I was
Hmm.
still having breathing problems. And I came to you, and I remember one of the things you noticed was that my diaphragm wasn't inflating all the way while I was breathing because, like, I was sort of just like hooked underneath my rib from my rib cage, and you like
Yeah, I
got in
remember
there.
your liver was a little stuck, and we got your liver to move, and then your diaphragm opened up, and yeah, that was
It,
fun.
it was crazy. It was like you added 18% more oxygen to my intake just in that session. I was like, I can't believe I've spent 6 months like not being able to breathe.
Yeah, it's
And
crazy. And we did some breathing stuff with you, right? Too, I remember, because a
mhm.
lot of times the connective tissue on the lungs get tight, just like everything else. And we do techniques with breath to open that up. And then as an athlete, it's amazing because it helps your VO2 max by about 15%, which is huge. And it's like,
Yes.
because most of our breathing is labored, and you don't realize how hard it is to breathe till it's
Mm.
easy. And you're like, wow, that
Mhm.
was a lot of work.
Right?
So yeah, it's all fun stuff.
Yeah, we did a lot of fun stuff that session. I remember I had gone wake surfing the day before with my coach, and like, and the feedback people were sending me are like, you got to move your hips more. You got to loosen those hips. I was like, my hips are like as loose as they can be. And then I came and saw you, and we did all the stretching and the cage and the walking exercises and all. I was leaving and I was like, oh my God, I have Shakira hips. Like, I didn't know my hips could move like this. I didn't even think that was possible. And
Yeah, it's fun,
it's so
all
good.
that
And I
tension's just sitting in the nervous system, and if we just teach the body how to do its job, it all just comes back super fast.
I literally call you my fixer. Like, you're the guy I go to when the next decision is probably surgery. So like, let's go to Lynn first and see what he can fix.
Oh, we try,
And
right? I'm not a healer and I'm not a fixer, but I like to put, information into the body. And it's like I loved your quote on your website about awareness, right?
mm,
What was
thought
the
that's
guy's
so great.
name? Because I saw them like, oh, I have that in my PowerPoint. I'll be using that tomorrow. It's what's his name? The Chinese guy.
Yeah, Lao Tzu.
Oh gosh, yeah, Lao Tzu. When he said, I have it here somewhere. I was going to look at it, but he, talks about when you touch one thing with deep awareness, you touch everything, and so that's
Hmm.
a big part of what we teach is like we do awareness projection exercises because as you know in energy medicine and as a good therapist yourself, when you really project your awareness into the body, that's the key of being a good therapist because we're not rubbing on skin. Our brain and our awareness has to be in there, or their body doesn't get it, right? It's like
Hmm.
all we're doing as therapists is putting information in there. And if we're not putting our awareness into the body, we can't pick up on it. I always tell people it's like, because I usually teach in like a conference hotel or something. And I'm like, yeah, well, if there was something wrong with this hotel, if you just came out and touched the wall, could you tell where the problem, where the fire was or the leak in the hotel was? No, you have to go in there, right? Because
Hmm.
energy follows awareness. And so when we can project our awareness and do stuff in there, that's what it's all about because then the body
Yeah.
gets the information and makes the changes itself. We're just educators basically as therapists,
I love
whether
that
it's
concept.
energetic or whatever, right? Because then with otherwise we get all you're like, oh, I healed them. Oh, I just like, no, you didn't. You gave them information. Their body went, thank you. So like, yeah,
Yep.
if you get better, it's between you and God. That's your own damn problem. I'm just giving your body information and then I get out.
I
So
know it's
that's the
such a
fun part.
weird thing to have the title of healer because it's like really I'm just a blockage remover and an information giver, like you said. And
Yeah.
I when I touch people, my modality is like, okay, you've got this knot, and so I take a deep breath and I relax into it, and I send love, and I ask their body to let go, and then their body usually
Yeah.
does,
That's what it's
and
all
it's
about.
yeah.
We're just there as servants. It's like, hey, body, what would you need? What would you like? And I'll help you.
Mm,
And then it does it. Yeah, we're just
hmm.
serving, and that's its slippery slope, right? To get into that healer thing, because then we end up giving them our energy, which makes us sick. I know that's why I have this tattoo because I gave so much of my
Mm,
energy away. I got melanoma. I'm like, why am I getting cancer? This is stupid, but I gave too much, right? Or I took it on because my
mm,
like healer, they need to get better. And so you learn those lessons the hard way if you're always tired as a therapist. It's like, well, stop giving them your energy, right? And that's
yeah, right.
even physiologically, right? If we're working on somebody, well, typically if they come to us, it's to get better, right? And so it's just basic science. We're all made out of protons, neutrons, and electrons. And if they're less healthy than we are, that means they have less electrons. So as soon as we touch them, they're draining electrons from us. So
Hmm.
that's why we need to go out and get our batteries charged up. That's just basic science. So
Right.
that's why I
That's
use my microcurrent and other stuff, or go out and walk in the wet grass to get yourself filled up, or
mm,
you'll be doing that. And so if you can kind of keep that, at bay by, you know, like a surgeon, right? If I went to a heart surgeon, I wouldn't say, if he's like, oh my God, Lynn, I hope I save you. I better do this. And if he's like worried, I'm like, dude, don't touch me. I don't want you to care about your job, right? And unfortunately, in our profession, because we end up being nurturers and caregivers, it's easy to do that. But anymore, I'm like, yeah, I don't care, right? Because then when people project that, I mean, I'm usually booked out like 3 weeks to a month in advance. Be like, is there any way you could see me? I'm like, sorry, I
Yeah,
can only
right.
do so much. And, you just have to kind of come from that place. It's like, hey, I'm here to serve you, but not kill myself in the thing.
Right.
So if you get better, great. If you don't, we can be neutral, and we get way better results when we're neutral
Hmm.
about stuff, right? It's called holding space.
Totally. I call that being at
Hmm.
capacity for the day. Like I'm already at my capacity for the day. And for me, that's like 4 to 5 hours of client time in a day at
Yeah.
most. And I don't do that every day even. So I'm like, all right, I could stack like a 5 hour day as long as I'm going to have like a 2 hour day the next day.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. And I do about, I am learning my limits being 54 years old now. My body's like, don't do
Mm.
this anymore. But I tend to do 3 days a week. I'll do 8 hours. I mean, I'll do
Oof.
4 hours and then a 1 hour break and then 4 hours and get out. But I also, that's 3 days a week. And then I might have somebody fly in or come to my house or something, on the other days if I feel like it to make up for it. But it's just the fact that I have to commute like 40 minutes to my office, and
Mm.
otherwise I just jump in there. I like to knock it out because it takes so much time in our other businesses to do. If I just work 6 hours a day, honestly, I'd never have time to get anything done. So I compress it
Yep.
for now.
Y-
But
Yeah.
that's, it takes a toll. It sure does.
Absolutely. You got me thinking about
Lot
I've been thinking for the last few days. I was like, do I need to just fly out and go see Lynn for this thing in my back? Like it's almost there, but I'm like, I could just go see Lynn anyways.
Yeah. We could do some distance work and see what we can clear out that way, or do a functional assessment with it. If not, we can come in
Yeah.
and we'll throw some bows at it, see what we can
s-
do.
To explain to my listeners why distance work actually works.
Well, the funny thing is there's been more research done on energy medicine and distance work than there has for like Prozac. I mean, it's been our army's been doing it, our government's been researching that for so long. It's
Mm,
crazy. In fact, Greg Braden has a lot of books about that. And one of our friends, we see at conferences a lot, his name's James Oshman. And he has two books that are really, really great if you want to get nerdy about it. It's one's called The Scientific Basis for Energy Medicine, and the other one is
mm,
Energy Medicine. I think it's in sports performance and human intervention or something like that. But it's James, and his last name is Oschman. He's a good guy. And he's just
yep.
compiled all of the research that's been done forever. And they just talk about, so much of quantum physics and the observer effect, and all of that
Hmm.
stuff that they've done so much research. And the thing that I find with that too, if you think about how we're really working, right? Everything is protons, neutrons, and electrons. The only difference between me and this chair, my grandpa's stuffed fish on the wall, right, is information and consciousness that holds all that together. So when we can really get our belief systems to change to the truth about how things are, then it's so much easier to change the informational level than it is to get the physical body to go, right? And
Mm,
sometimes the body
yes.
wants a physical level, sometimes it's energetic. But for me, I my results energetically went when I had somebody did a bunch of Ewan method and neuroemotional technique and some body talk on my belief systems about what was possible in healing, right? Because if I don't believe it's true as a practitioner, their body's like, yeah, I'm not going to believe you. You don't trust yourself. Yeah, good,
Totally.
right? Whatever. So once we get our brains shifted, it's pretty easy to do. And I think we all, as you know, I mean, we learn all these energy techniques and they're all great, but we're in kindergarten of energy medicine. We don't even know what we're doing.
Mm,
I mean, we do, and I thought the Body Talk did a great job of really getting taking a protocol chart and using a left brained way to make sure that your intuition that you're testing for is right. That was the biggest thing. And it's the thing that I loved about that too is instead of kind of testing the body or doing a muscle test for stuff, that's okay, but that can be horribly biased because you're still testing of, do you need this, or is this right, or is this wrong for you? And that tends to fall back into that diagnostic model of, okay, well, here's your symptoms and you have all these symptoms, then this is what we do, right? That's why our
hmm.
Western medicine friends are wonderful at emergency medicine, but they suck at everything else, right? They don't do
Yeah.
healthcare, they do sick care. And so the thing I loved about Body Talk is you started testing priority testing. Like, hey, body, I don't care what's wrong with you. What is your priority? What's the thing you want to do first? And that's what I like at work. It might say, oh, give me some cranial-sacral therapy. Oh, go clear out this chakra. Oh, move my L4 vertebrae. Oh, hey, get rid of this trauma when a girl beat me up and humiliated me in second grade. Whatever
Mm-hmm.
happens, I like that we can just kind of have a system to dive in and figure out what it is. But we learn all these techniques, which I just call them, they're kind of guidelines or hints at how it works, because yeah, as you know, with Reiki we make it all of our own, right? We all just say, okay, I
Yeah.
like this, but this feels or this works better for me. So and it's fun to,
Yeah.
I feel like everybody's like, oh, you're like one of the authorities in energy medicine. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. It works, but I'm not gonna lie and be like, oh yes, I know what's happening. It's just
Yeah.
not how it works, right?
Yeah.
We're every day, that's how it works. I mean, there's days when I leave work like, wow, that was amazing. All these people got better. There's other days I leave work and go, God, I suck. This is terrible. I quit. I can't figure it out. That's
Oh
just part
God.
of any profession, you know?
What a relief. You too. I have
Oh,
those days
yeah,
as
no.
well where people are like, "Can you explain to me what it is that you do?" And I'm like, I've recently been unlocked to do a lot more than I could do before. Like now what I do is way transcended Reiki energy healing. Like Reiki
Yeah,
energy is like kindergarten compared to what
it's
I'm
old
doing now.
school. Yeah, I know it. So a lot of people like, oh, I do Reiki. I go get Reiki. I just kind of go, okay, well, do you wanna? No, I'm all respect to Reiki. Don't get me wrong, but it's
Sure.
so outdated for that. But it's
Yep.
amazing, right?
Yeah.
Blockages, clear. Just I still use it. It's
Yep.
whatever the
I
body
remember
wants.
you were one of the first people I told. I was like, "Lynn, I'm finally a Reiki master." And you're like, "That's cool, but have you heard of this?" And I was like,
Ah, no, no, it's really great though, because I'll sometimes people like just give me Reiki, leave me alone, and I love it because
Mhm.
you can get out of the space and it just opens up. The first time that I was a Reiki master, and I could say I was like not a Reiki atheist, but I'm like, okay, it works. I felt it. I felt better.
Yeah.
But I was out wakeboarding and did a back roll and came up short and bam, blew out my eardrum. And I was like, oh, it hurt so bad and I couldn't sleep. And I got up the next morning. I remember getting out of the shower and drying my hair. I'm like, what is that? And there was this huge ball of energy off my left ear, which I did. And I just
Mm.
did a Reiki symbol and followed it in, and it took about 4 or 5 minutes. But when it cooled off, my ear was 100% perfect, no pain, and I could hear perfect. I was like, okay, so yeah, that's legit. That's awesome.
Wow.
Here we go. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think God gives us all those things to go, okay, I need you to do more of this, so I'm gonna make you prove
Mhm.
yourself to it. So
Right?
yeah,
Like
but it's good stuff.
there are days I have surrendered and relaxed into literally working on someone's soul, like all of their energetic DNA makeup, all of it at once. Like and usually that's partnered with plant medicine, but like
Hmm.
I get so deep, and all of a sudden you get to affect everything that makes them up, all of their energetic systems at once, and then there's some days where I'm like, whew, is this person just resistant or what's going on here? We're just
Yeah,
trying to move
sometimes
things.
that's just it, right? And that's
Mhm.
the you can lead a horse to the bar, but he won't always drink the shot. That's what I say. It's more
Yeah.
fun than to water. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, and that's the thing, and that's like people too, don't take responsibility for their health. We can do some great work, but it's like you should get off your couch and stop eating McDonald's every day. Then maybe we could have some luck with you because the whole energy field's just congested, right? But that's
Mhm.
how it goes.
Yeah. And so
See
we've
a
done a
few
lot of
miracles.
talking. We've
Oh,
mentioned body talk a bunch. What is body talk for those who don't know?
Body talk is a technique that's pretty cool. A guy named Dr. John Beltime, who just recently passed away, had developed it. And he was brilliant in the fact that he was a chiropractor, an acupuncturist, and a Reiki teacher, and all this stuff. And
Mm.
he's one of the smartest people you ever meet. And he just learned all these techniques, or took all these other techniques that he had learned and put them in a protocol chart, and then gave you a way to test the body for what its priorities are. It's really about testing the body for which body parts aren't communicating together or aren't synchronized, is what that basically is. Now there's an offshoot of it that I really love now called body intuitive, that a couple of my friends that used to be in BodyTalk did it. It's a lot more for practitioners, and really, it's really
Mm.
great stuff. It's pretty can be pretty heady, but the results are amazing. The One of the people that put it together, my friend Janet, she's a great doctor of Oriental medicine, just amazing acupuncturist. My other friend, Dr. Laura Stuve, she's out in California. They're up in Santa Cruz, and she used to be a researcher and teacher up at Berkeley. So she was one of the people
Mm.
that spent a lot of time researching our genetics and all that, which now we know was almost a waste of time, right? It's all epigenetics. It's like, yeah, you spent
Yep.
$1 trillion and got nothing out of it, basically. That it's all epigenetics. And it's like, are we
Yep.
still like, oh, when people are like, oh, it's a helix? No, that's not what the DNA looks like. It's all the misinformation out there for that we've needed for the last 2 years to sell drugs. But
Mm.
yeah, whole nother subject. But anyway, they put up a new class called Body Intuitive, which is basically another class that does. I really love it. My wife took it. It's great. It's amazing for allergies and just all kinds of immune system stuff. But also the chakras
Mm.
and all of energy, every aspect they go into it very deeply. Quantum physics. It's pretty great. So I love that. I also love source point therapy. That's one of my favorite
Mm.
therapies. I learned about that when I was teaching over in Japan, and anyone can take it. It's very powerful. My friend Bob Shree and his wife had come up with that. He's an old school rolfer, just a great guy. They live
Mm.
out in New Mexico, but he's very artsy and very Buddhist and very into all that stuff. But they had come up with a way where they found out, like, where they would see in all these old pictures of all these shamanic pictures of all these dots around the body. And so they would do deep meditations and all this stuff and find it. And anyway, long story short, it's an easy technique where you're kind of plugging the body back into its own blueprint, because we're
Ooh.
all, the way we're designed, we all have a blueprint, and the sperm and egg come together, and our innate wisdom reads that blueprint, and so source point therapy is amazing because you get the body plugged into the blueprint, and then you go in and you remove blockages and do a bunch of other things. Very easy technique, but it's
Mm.
powerful. In fact, I used to teach a structural integration class for BodyTalk where we would go in and release fascia, energetically without having to touch people, and release a lot of
Mm.
structural stuff. And once I took that or had that done and took the first class, I'm like, well, I'm done teaching that class because this is so much easier, works so much better with that. Even though I got to go around the world, make a lot of money on that class, I was like, well, just the ethics of this being out there, which is easier, I just can't teach that anymore. So I kind of like, you guys got to go take source point therapy, and it's a very cool technique. It's amazing. So there's just, and that's more for, if you want to change the structure of the body energetically, that technique is amazing. And I
Mm.
do a lot of that with distance sessions and things like that too. But which all the energy stuff you can do, but it's one of the main ones. They're pretty awesome. Just, it's a
Yeah.
great time because there's so many amazing people out there making out so many techniques, and I hear of so many others. I wish I could, my wife and I laugh that if we could just win the lottery, we would just travel around and take classes all the time. All right. So
Oh, I've been having the same thought lately too. I'm like, gosh, even just like
yeah,
the little mini lottery winnings, I would be so good with that. Just the next 3 years, just travel around, learn things.
absolutely. And I think, it's a great time because everybody's so aware, especially in the last
Mm.
few years of what's out there about health and what's not and what we're programmed with. And that's why we're actually, in next year, we're going to start doing some healing retreats because we looked out there and there's like, oh, there's all these great retreats around the world, but it's like, a yoga retreat, which is amazing, right? They're great.
Mhm.
And there's all kinds of healing retreats, but we're like, ooh, wait till we put one together where you're doing yoga and breath work and teaching you how to clear your energy field. And we'll be doing, the cool thing about energy work is I used to do a lot of stuff on our site. In fact, we're thinking about starting it back up again, is doing monthly sessions for people on this, because with energy, right, I can if we think about how we really work, like you could call me up like we've done and say, okay, hey, I'm going to do a session on you, Barrett. But if I can get 10 people or 3 people or 1,000 people, I can still test what the priority is for the entire group. And because we all kind of have the same
Mm.
issues, right? When you
Mhm.
do that and you get that more many people, it's a lot more powerful. So A lot of people do that type of work. We kind of pioneered that in the past, but we got so busy teaching individuals. But in these retreats, I want to get people in a room and just start picking apart everybody's belief systems and blockages and all that,
Yeah.
because real healing, if we don't go to those levels, and then hey, get up every morning and have a functional workout and stretching, and then have the whole day to explore a beautiful place and jump in the ocean and pull all the
Mm.
goo out with the ions. That's kind of like, hey, that sounds like fun. If everybody else is doing it, we need to get on that, because I think we could maybe do a little different or a little bit better in some areas. So that'd
Oh
be
my gosh,
cool.
I would definitely attend. I'd
I'll
be like
keep you posted.
a whole weekend to just like heal. Oh,
Yeah, well, you travel a lot, so if you know of any good
I do.
resorts that we could do it at, let me know, because we're going to be looking at that.
Okay, deal. You open to out of the country?
Of course.
Cool. Keep you posted.
Yeah, so you'll tell me, I guess you need to teach me how to surf better if we're going to where you want to go. I understand. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and my mentor now in shamanism and facilitation, he's looking at taking ayahuasca to Costa Rica. And so
Ooh,
he's
nice.
looking at spots right now that are on the ocean and could hold that space for big ceremonies as well.
Yeah, we should
So,
talk about that, because that's something that keeps coming up for me, and I guess it's time for me to take that journey. And my little conservative, tight Christian roots. Well, not that there's anything wrong with being Christian; it's pretty open. But just the growing up in a small town in the middle of Nebraska, you're right. It's like, oh, this is bad and that's bad. Now, as I mature and grow up, and I'm like, yeah, I totally want to expand my consciousness and figure out what that's
mm,
about. So
have you done any
it's
plant
time.
medicines yet?
I have not.
Oh my gosh, Lynn. And to think you've gotten to where you are without it is just like, you're going to unlock like 1,000 more levels.
I know, that's what I hear. My wife's like, "Oh God, wait till you try mushrooms. I don't know if it's gonna be great or horrible for you." I'm like, yeah, sounds good. Haven't gotten there yet though, so one of these days. Just
Ugh.
hasn't presented itself.
Well, when you're ready for mushrooms, I'm your girl.
All
Uh,
right.
when you're ready for ayahuasca, I know where to take you.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll
Yeah,
have to figure that out.
we definitely
Because I would
should.
actually love to get in that space and do energy medicine with people, to just see what it's like and what comes up, or maybe just to observe somebody else doing it, because I bet it's pretty crazy.
Oh, it's
So
so profound. I do a lot of energy work and body work on mushrooms as well. And so
nice.
either I just take it or my clients take it also. And I mean, I can see the energy systems running through the body. I had a client who was a smoker. I could actually see the blackness of his lungs. He's been smoking for 30 years, like I mean, it almost brought me to tears once I realized what I was seeing,
I
to
bet.
see that. And then to just deeply touch people's energy fields, to touch their source code and up level that and raise the frequency from like pure creationism. It's wild, almost
Yeah.
like two clouds of smoke coming together and expanding into something different. Um,
Yeah, it's so cool with that type of work, right? Because I bet you can really see the patterns that kind of evolved to create that dysfunction, and what and how it's serving
yeah.
them, and be like, you no longer need that. There's another way that's better. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
doesn't get any better than that.
It really doesn't. And if they're in the medicine as well, they're so open to receiving that new programming as well. And
Yeah, and
yeah.
it just fascinates me too, looking at the science behind the psilocybin and all this stuff, and how much the CIA had done research, and then it's like, oh, this is bad, let's hide it. It's like, are you kidding me? And so they stigmatized all of that, like they do,
Hmm.
oh, marijuana's bad, but get drunk every weekend, and so it's just like, yeah, that makes, don't do drugs, but you should be on this, because even though you have 90,000 side effects, right? But
Hmm.
yeah, it's just the research behind it. And I have a couple. There's a ayahuasca place in town here, and I had a
Mm.
couple clients that were vets that had some PTSD stuff and came out after one session. And one guy was like, "I'm completely fine." The other guy did it a couple times, and
Mm.
then he was fine. I was like, "Okay, that was amazing." So
Right.
you never
Yeah.
know.
And I think you make a great point about just the most popular drug that's bad for you, alcohol. And everyone's all about drink this alcohol. And you go to a family gathering and everyone wants to drink. You go out, like I'm experimenting with dating again, and people are like, "Oh, let's go out for a drink." And I'm like, "That's literally the one thing I don't want to do." Like,
Yeah, it's
do
like,
you
how about we go for a run? Or, yeah, I know, but it's just
Yeah,
that society, right? It's like, hey, here's something that'll take the edge off so we can sit here and stand to be with each other and get the anxiety out of the way. And yeah, hey, I love
yeah,
my red wine, but anymore, I don't like feeling like crap, and I don't have time
exactly.
for it. And it's just
Exactly.
my liver's like, what are you doing? You're not 21. Just stop it. Yeah, so that's how
I
it
know.
works.
People love to gift alcohol, and I've got some great bottles of wine sitting in my mini fridge. And I'm just like, okay, wait, when can I afford to feel like shit the next morning? Like, when do I not want to go surf early? When do I like not have clients I need to be
Mhm.
responsible for? Like, okay, wait, that's like never. So, and then
Yeah,
like
and
I want to
it's
take
funny.
mushrooms. I'll end
Yeah,
up taking
exactly. It's like
mushrooms,
that.
and other people are like, "You're doing what?" And I'm like, I literally took a less
Yeah,
than a gram of mushrooms to hang out with you right now. And if I
yeah.
feel
And
great,
guess what? Yeah, I'll feel amazing tomorrow morning, and you won't.
mm.
Yeah. I mean, I've never done mushrooms, but that's what I hear
It's
until
all
you
true.
corrupt me.
It's all true.
Yeah, and it's
It-
funny, right? Because it just, and we really don't know, but for me, looking at that stuff or seeing what they do, and being one of those people that can see a lot of subtle energies and especially feel them, who knows what portal that's opening up to? And I'm sure there's a doorway where you could go a lot of good and bad ways once you open it. But I think it just probably takes a lot of filters off your brain to where you're like, oh, because I mean,
mm,
science has proven that, if I can sit here and work on one of my clients in South Africa, where I can just bring them into my mental workshop and see everything and do it just as well as they're here, we're tuned into every single person on this
mhm.
planet whenever we want. We can feel and get all that information, but we're just our educational system, like once the Rockefellers took it over and made us all mindless drones to go get jobs and be poor and not think, right? That just
Yeah.
anything that's like, ooh, if that's right brained, or ooh, whatever, no, that's not good, or ooh, that's artsy. Be artsy, but keep it in a box. And I think
Mm,
that people are surprised when they start learning energy modalities or doing things, how much their intuition is on, and to allow them to develop that. I was terrible at intuitive stuff years ago. I mean, I was like the worst body talk practitioner. I would lose my testing ability all the time, but I just kept at it and kept at it, and now it's like, yeah, you can do all right.
mhm.
So, I mean, I'm good with what's going on with clients. I can't tell you what, what the stock market's going to do yet, but
Oh,
when I do, yeah, I've
that'll
totally
be.
got the lottery thing figured out every time, but I just feel it would be bad ethically if I won the lottery.
Oh, is
Just
that your
kidding.
excuse?
Like, why did he win it again? It's like that. Don't know.
Ah, that would be yeah, I really wanna, play the lottery after I do ayahuasca next time, because I feel like I walk
Yeah.
away so tapped into creating through the source code that, like, I can literally walk anywhere and, like, make anything happen, and I'm just like, "I think I just need to go buy a lottery ticket as soon as I get back in January."
Yeah, I know. I should do that too. For me, I'm usually like, all right, what's the next business or thing that I can come up with to capitalize on? So maybe I'm
Mm.
still steeped in my Midwestern. You only work 60 hours this week. You're lazy. It's like, so I get something
Yeah.
for nothing. Yes, I'll take that. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to
More
down those
programming to pull out.
hours, raise the price, down the hours, honor
Yeah, no,
your
I keep raising my prices. I'm expensive, but there's just so many people I want to help, and I'm not
Mhm.
like, I still go and have fun and do things, but so I got some good students around that I send people to.
And so who
Yeah.
works on you?
Well, it really depends on what I want.
Mm,
I've got a good friend over in Spain. He's the guy that introduced me to the UN method that I'll jump to once in a while to do things. I've got some therapists in town. I tend to jump around depending on what I need. I've got a real good friend named Paul Pock here, who's an amazing therapist. We're kind of like the OGs of Orlando. We've been around forever. He's just
mm,
amazing. And my friend Pete, who's actually our teaching assistant, is amazing. Love him. He's coming up this weekend, so I'll get some body work from him. He's awesome. So yeah,
cool.
or my wife, she's a therapist, but she doesn't really do it. But she's been through our classes so many times that, she's like, I'm like, hey, my infraspinatus is okay. she's pretty darn good just from osmosis of being in the classes teaching. So that depends.
Hmm.
Depends on what I need. But
Yeah.
I'm like you once in a while. I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. I just want to relax. Like, you should go get some body work. I'm like, oh, I have to put it on my schedule or I don't get it. I've been better about that
Yeah.
lately.
Oh, good for you. I
Hmm.
need to get better about that. Like, I love the times when I'm like, okay, every other week at least, and then it's like you just get such peak performance and peak
Oh yeah.
feeling energetically. And, it's a big reminder to me how much I just start carrying just stuff that like we can't flush out ourselves.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, for sure. And I know, especially energetically, if things are breaking or aren't going smoothly, not
mm,
that I can fight Mercury retrograde or anything, but it's like when I can just tell, like, okay, things are just a little bit off or they're more difficult, then I'm like, yeah, I need to get with somebody and do some energy clearing because we just clear it up. I mean, I'll do, like, I love pranic healing. That's easy for anybody to learn, and I can clear
mm,
myself, and it's great, and all that. It was when I used to have Lyme disease, I used to do that a lot just to get through the day. But you know, it's important to get that energetic hygiene for all of
yeah.
us because we're, can walk through a angry room. I always tell my clients I'm right above this big cigar company restaurant bar. So there's people smoking cigarettes and they have to walk through and they're like, oh, I'm gonna
Mm.
smell like cigars. I'm like, sorry, even though they're outside, but I just kind of say it's like, well, I like that as an advantage because, like, well, let's say you were in a room that was really stressed, or you're around family or somebody that's stressed. You weren't stressed, but you're around somebody that was. That kind of sticks to us, and that's why we
Hmm.
can feel heavy and all that. And getting all that cleared off it's just like hygiene. We wash our hands, but we never learn how to, unless we're standing out in the wet ground. We don't have a way to discharge all that static electricity, and we have all our rubber soled shoes and everything, and we're just so disconnected from the earth, and we build up all this stuff we never get rid of. And it's
Hmm.
important. Energetic hygiene is a very important thing.
What are some of your favorite shoes to wear that'll connect you that don't have those rubber soles that allow that connection with the earth?
I don't have any. I can't wear
Oh,
flip-flops because of my shape of my feet. My wife has some, and she just got a new pair. I can't remember the name of them, but they've got the little um, like brass thing that runs through the bottom of it and up
mhm.
to the top, so it's right underneath the ball of your foot. I can't remember the
Oh,
name of those
cool.
companies, but they've got those. But I don't a lot. I'll just, like, lovely thing is it's Florida in December. I can go outside
Mm,
and stand in my yard and be wonderful, and I don't freeze to death doing that. So I tend to try and do that several times a week. And I've got a lot of, or salt water. If I can't do that at work, I'm always spraying my hands down with vodka and lavender oil and salt. I throw all the energetic
mm.
stuff in a bowl of salt water and pour it out at the end of the day. Or, just anything salty, especially you in the ocean, you go in there, it just discharges. So
Yeah.
I try to do that since I can't wear the shoes.
Yeah, you're giving me a great reminder of why it's so important for me to surf. Like
Yeah.
mornings are generally my free time, quote unquote. But I'm always trying to go surf. But then it was like work catch up time for a while. And then it's like, okay, well, if I overslept surfing, what am I going to do? It turns into chores. And now I'm surfing like twice a week right now. And I feel it where I'm like, I need to surf more than that. And people who don't understand are like, well, you can give up some of your surf time to make headway on your work stuff. And I'm like, but you really can't. Like, I really can't.
Well, you
It,
can for a week, but then after that, you just get bogged down. That's why people don't realize and they get burned out at work and all that stuff. It's not just mental, it's physiological. And if your brain is one
mm,
big electrical thing, and if you don't discharge it and go out and do something or exercise, it just builds up. So that's why a lot of people are like,
mm-hmm,
oh, you've been doing this for 30 years, you don't get that burned out on. It's like, well, there's times when I'm like, okay, I've had enough, but I never feel like, oh, this quits, right? And I think, like, you're surfing, that's, you've got to have that outlet or that get in touch with nature and the spirituality of that stuff. Otherwise, what's the point of being alive? We tend to make, I mean, I can be a workaholic very easily, very quickly, but
mm-hmm.
um, says the guy who hasn't taken a day off to Thanksgiving in 4 weeks. But but
What?
taking the time every day to get to the gym or do stuff, it's just that's my piece, that's I get up in the morning and go for walks and, or runs
Mm-hmm.
or get to the gym, and it's just enough to get you grounded, and then you're like, hey, outside is beautiful. I'm okay. That works.
Mm. Mm-hmm. And
Because
so
otherwise, ugh.
we've mentioned,
Go ahead.
that
Sorry.
there's these parts of like the triangle to take care of, right? So there's the body,
hmm
there's your energy, there's the spirit. Um, do you consider those to be sort of the three parts, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, we have a physical body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have how it moves and all the physiology. How does our blood move? All of that stuff. And then the energetic aspect. And, our bodies are just holding the spirit and the energy and the information, and the physiology is how we make things happen on the planet with it, the movement. So you can't have one without the other, right? If we stop moving, then the body gets, basically when we die, we stop moving, right? That's
Right.
your heart stop moving, your cranial-sacral rhythm. But if we don't do the energetic aspect or the spiritual aspects, then the rest of it gets really messed up, because we're not questioning why, and we're not going deeper into our existence and really knowing ourselves and our creator. And then, that's kind of the purpose that we're here, is to evolve
Mm.
spiritually. And, you know, yeah, I mean, we could go on forever about that, but I think if you're not spending time doing that, and for me, it's easy, like, okay, I worked out and you know, did some stretches at work. I got this, but if I don't have my meditation time or sit and breathe into all my body parts that are tense and figure out what the emotion is and what I'm supposed to learn from it and let it go, that's usually for me the first thing to go. It's like, oh, I'll do it later. And then I'm like,
Mm.
oh, football scores. Yeah, well, I'll do it in a minute. And like, crap, I just got sucked into a YouTube, thing, TikTok thing, and
Mm-hmm.
now I didn't do it. I got to go to bed. And then 5 days later, you're like, God, I just don't feel good, or I feel really anxious. And I think that's carving out that time, like you said, at least every other day to spend time with that. We would all have a lot more health, make a lot better decisions, and need a lot less alcohol or whatever people do with cigarettes, to do that.
Right.
So all of those levels, right? If we don't work out, if we don't move, all of it, if we don't stretch our bodies and get it worked on, it's not good.
Yeah. And what research are you starting to see come through the pipeline right now that you're really excited about?
Ah, that's a funny one. Well, just for me, in the last couple of weeks, if you notice, my tongue's probably a little blue in my
I had
teeth.
not, but let me see it now.
They are, yes. I have a, here you go. Now I have blue teeth.
Oh,
I One of my friends who's a physical therapist, her husband's a massage therapist, I know, and they found out he had stage 3 cancer and tumors, and so
mm,
he went to a cancer facility down in Mexico. And I had Lyme disease cured back in April.
wow.
I'd had it really, really bad, and then I caught COVID and couldn't go away. And a doctor that I knew had given me a lovely little potion that took it all off in 20 hours, and I felt great. And then I stayed on it for about 3 weeks, and my Lyme disease is pretty much gone.
Wow.
So, yes, I won't say what it is because I don't want to get in trouble, but it's not ivermectin or all the other things that they got in trouble over. But you can
Mm,
look up CLO2. That's all I'm going to say. Or go to
okay.
andreaskalker.com is a lovely German
Mm,
biophysicist who talks about that stuff. But that got rid of all that stuff for me. Um, but my friend who went to Mexico, they were using the stuff, and then also they had a thing called methylene blue, and she said, "Have you heard about this?" And I said, "No." And so she goes, "Well, get some and take it." And now, of course, Dave Asprey and all these, the bulletproof coffee
mm,
guy, all these people are touting it, but there's this food dye that they made in like the 1860s, and not food dye, I'm sorry, clothing dye. That's how you get like
mm,
blue things. It's methylene blue. And then the doctors and scientists back then wanted to understand cells better, and so they would take the blue dye and put it on cells and look at under the microscopes because it gave contrast so they could study it. And then what they realized though is like all the little parasites and little viruses and stuff around it started dying, but the cell got really healthy. And they didn't understand why, because back then they couldn't understand the science and all that. But
mm,
what they did do is they started to make it the very first treatment for malaria. So they would just put it in
Oh,
water and people would drink it, and your pee would turn blue, but there's no side effects and it would kill all the stuff. And so it was like the first supposed magic bullet, but since it's a textile thing that you can't patent it, the pharmaceutical company's like, meh, whatever. But every emergency room in the country carries it because if you have arsenic poisoning or other types of poisoning and you go in there, they will put methylene blue in an IV and it will neutralize it.
no
So
kidding.
what they found, yeah, it's amazing. But what they found out that it does is when we think about, once again, getting back to energy, right? When we eat food, our body breaks it down into vitamins and minerals or breaks down the constituents to get all the fuel in there and then get rid of what's not good and keep it. And then eventually that gets into our bloodstream and goes to cells. And then our body breaks it down into electrons. And then they take that electron into the cell through what's called the electron transport chain. And then that goes into the mitochondria to create what we call ATP or adenosine
Mm.
triphosphate, which is what gives us energy. And so what they found methylene blue does is it actually heals the electron transport chain and it
Whoa.
kills all the little stuff around it. And it can even become the electrons that you need. So it totally heals the cells and heals the cellular metabolism. That's why they're starting to research it for cancer and brain trauma and all that stuff. And it is amazing. Like your brain just boom. It's like a nootropic. Somebody's calling it like the limitless pill, right? In fact, my son
Mm.
has pretty bad ADD, and I go, "Here, son, Thomas, drink this." And he's like, "What is that?" And I go, "Just trust me, drink it." And of course, I had to drink it first, so he thought I wasn't just trying to dye his tongue blue. But he drank it, and he goes, "Well, what's going to do for him?" I go, "Just let me know how you're feeling today." And he had to do an event at Universal Studios with this company, and he was texting me like, "Holy crap! Like my concentration is amazing. I feel so good, right?"
Mm.
And people are losing weight because your cellular metabolism works. You start burning more energy, and it's cool. So that is the latest thing that I've looked at as far as, it's almost like liquid energy medicines. You can go on Amazon and buy, I think I got Compass Labs methylene blue, and it's like $30. It'll last you like 4 months, but it really helps to go
Mm.
in and heal up a bunch of broken cells. It's a really anti-aging thing that here's it's a blue dye that they didn't know how it worked until they learn about the electron transport chains and how it works. So I just
Yeah.
love, I find something like that every month that I look into and check out and do. And, it's all fun stuff. But,
Yeah.
I don't
Take
know.
it. Taking
Next
notes on
month
that
it'll
right
be
now.
something about fascia or whatever I'm always into. I just, a serial researcher, I guess. My wife gets annoyed if we have to buy a new trash can because I'll spend like 3 hours researching and looking at reviews. Okay, this is the one we get. She's like, just buy a trash can. But I can't help that. I have to know.
I think we have that in common for sure. Like I'm doing an office chair right now, and it's like there's so many office chairs, and you just got to look at them all, read all the reviews, make sure they don't fall apart quickly, like all the things. But
Yeah.
meth- and so, are there any side effects of that to kind of be wary of? Like,
Blue urine. That's about it. Yeah. I
darn.
mean, if you took a ton of it, you wouldn't, but I mean, I don't know. They say the dosage. There's a lots of stuff out there. There's lots of books on. I mean, if you just Google methylene blue, you'll be like, oh my God, there's so much on it out there. How did I not know about it?
Mm,
But yeah, I
yeah.
don't know. I mean, I can't make recommendations with my license or anything. I'm just saying that's what I research and it's pretty cool stuff and I feel great on it. So,
Mm,
but
well,
yeah,
adding
check
it
it
to
out.
my shopping list right now.
It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. And so, if my listeners would like to work with you upcoming, how can they do that?
They could go to trunamics.com, which is trunamics.com, and they can, there's a link there. Otherwise, you can go to massagebook.com/biz/Lynn Teachworth, just my name. So
Mhm.
trunamics.com is pretty easy to get there and can go on there and book a session.
Awesome.
So,
And then, how can they
so
keep up with you on social media? Where are you?
I hate social media. Well, we do an all right job. My wife does most of it. You can go find True Namics on Facebook or also on Instagram or on there.
Cool.
And so we do most of that. And my wife, she'll put a lot of stuff on what's called anatomy and asana. So she teaches a lot of embodied anatomy for yoga teacher trainings and stuff too. So she puts a lot of stuff on there. So if
Oh,
you're a
very
yoga
cool.
teacher and you want to learn anatomy and energy, go with her and her friend. They teach classes all over and teach dissection stuff for everybody if you want to learn more about the body and anatomy and fun stuff. And
Mm.
so that's where we are, Instagram, and you can always email me at lynn@truenamics.com or Facebook, but
Cool.
that would be mostly my wife making me put stuff on there.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I've been watching your social media slowly emerge over the last couple of years. So proud of
Yeah,
you.
I take like 2 days and then we just film a bunch of videos and do it and then post one a week and then like, oh, we ran out of videos. So yeah, we'll get a bunch this
Yeah,
weekend from our class. I'm sure we'll put on there.
nice. Well, thank you so much for joining me. You have just been a mentor to me all these years, and what you've been learning and sharing that knowledge with me, and how it's expanded my comprehension of what was possible. And it was definitely a deep inspiration for me to get into massage and energy work. So I thank you
Well,
so
hey, it's
much.
been my pleasure, and it's been awesome to watch how much of an amazing force you are in helping so many people and being a brilliant practitioner. That's pretty awesome. And
Oh,
to have the
thank you.
guts to put it out there and do stuff like this, I love that
Yeah. Well,
because you're awesome.
oh, thank you. So are you. And thank you so much for
Awesome.
joining me today.
My pleasure. Anytime. I'd love to come back.
I'll have you back for sure. For sure.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and review this podcast wherever you're listening. I'm so grateful to have you on this journey with me. Until next time.